Welcome. We're going to talk about a new AutoCAD MEP feature where we have added layer keys on display components. So the out-of-the-box AutoCAD MEP template back in 2012 and most of the previous releases before 2012 came with, so here is 2012. If I open up Layer Manager in a default out-of-the-box template, there are 29 built-in layers in here in our template in older releases. In 2013, in AutoCAD Architecture, we took it down to 0. There are 0 built-in layers in our templates in AutoCAD Architecture. AutoCAD MEP, we took it from 29 down to 4. So here are those 4, and these are mostly for the rise drop symbols. They support the rise drop blocks that are in the templates and cannot be removed. But all the display related layers are gone. So let's look at the displays. In Display Manager, when we go down here to Representation by Object, you'll notice on the display components, we've added a column here for layer key and layer field override. In the past, each one of these right here, contour hidden, was mapped to a hidden line layer. There is no more layers. We're mapping them to a layer key, a hidden line layer key. So what happens is when you go to add a duct object for the first time and you start to draw your duct object, it looks up the layer key that is set here on the display for a duct object. It goes out to the layer key style, which can be found here. If we go here and say open, and then in the open drawing, if you click on content folder, you can come here to layers. In the layers is an AEC B. B makes it for AutoCAD MEP. The one down here that says AEC without the B, that's for AutoCAD Architecture. So inside this AEC B file is where the layer key is stored under multi-purpose objects, layer key styles, and MEP object is the default layer key style for AutoCAD MEP. So what it does is it goes and it looks up the layer key in the layer key column here, and basically, let's go down here and find a one of the new keys. So hidden lines is right there, and it looks up the key name and references the layer itself. So this layer right here is the layer that it would return, and it generates that layer in Layer Manager for you. And it generates that layer with these attributes: color 8, hidden line 2, 0.5 millimeter, so on. So if you don't know about layer key styles, it's a great place to store all your default layers and layer keys and their properties. And layer key styles are kind of neat in that these layer keys right here, the same key names, this column here, should be the same in every one of these different styles here. So those don't change, but the layer itself can change all at once. So what happens is our displays are mapped to these keys here, and it says, okay, well, this MEP object is the current default style in my drawing. I'm going to look up the key in that file, and I'll return the layer, whatever that happens to be. You know, if MEP system, if this one were the current style, then it would look up the exact same key name in here, look over, and return the layer from this style. So what's nice about that is you only have to set up your displays once and map them to a very specific layer key. That key never changes. You can create custom layer styles in here. Let's go here and say copy. Right click, say copy. And we'll come here and say paste. And then we'll rename this one my customer 1. Alright, so now you've got a customer specific layer key style. You can come in here and change these layers to whatever layer you want. You know, I'm just very quickly giving a demo, so I'm not trying to be too specific with the layer. Can't type. Here we go. Anyway, you get the point that you can come in and change the layer in your custom layer key style. This name here should never change. That way our objects always point to the same key, pulls out whatever layer it needs to draw itself on, and it draws itself on that. And since these layer key styles exist outside of your drawing templates stay nice and clean of layers and layer key styles, and you can switch back and forth between styles before you draw your objects. So the workflow is you start a new drawing 1, you go into the drawing setup and tell it what layer key style you want to be the default, and then you start drawing, and it looks up that default, generates the key, generates the object on that layer, and you're all good. Let's create 2. So you might have a different customer. You might have your company standard layer style in here. Again, these keys should never change. Change the layers and the properties all you want, and it just works. That's the beauty of the whole system. In the past, why would we add the keys on these displays? Well, the displays were the one place in MEP and architecture where it had built-in layers. So let's just use duct for example. In the past, we didn't have these layer keys, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. In the past, this was just mapped to a layer directly. And so we had the 29 layers in Layer Manager. And what would happen is a new release would come out, and you would have to go to 2 locations to update the layers to your company layer standards. One, you'd have to go into Display Manager or Layer Manager. It probably didn't matter much. And you'd have to edit those 29 layers. Then you'd have to go into Style Manager and edit the layer key style in all those layers. Well, now with the displays mapped to layer keys, just like our system definitions and all of our other objects, you only have one location to go to, and that's the layer key style itself. So we can get to that in a different location just by coming here. So once you start drawing an object, it brings that layer key style into your current drawing like this. So once you've drawn an object, you'd probably go to this location in your current drawing rather than the style drawing where it originates from. But before you ever draw anything, it's this file back here that stores these layer key styles. So if you want to make permanent changes, you would make it here in this drawing here for all your layers. But once you draw an object, you would edit the layer key style in your current drawing. But really, once you draw an object, you don't even need to go to the layer key style to make changes, because those changes, once you've drawn an object, your object's already on that layer, right? The layer key styles are there to store the defaults. So you're basically saying, I want my duct to go on such and such layer with such and such properties. And so you draw your duct, it generates that layer from your key style. Well, you don't need that anymore because you've drawn your object already on that layer now. So once it generates the layer, you don't need to generate it twice. Anyway, that's just kind of the theory behind it. The layer key styles are there to store the defaults, so that you don't have to have all these layers built into your templates. It's easier to maintain your templates. It's easier to migrate as well. So let's talk about migration a little bit. I know a lot of companies already have their own company standard layer key styles. And let's just go look at our layer key style real quick. You might want to add, so we've added a handful of new layer keys in 2013. And let's look at those. We did not add 29 new layer keys. We've only we've added some general layer keys. So all hidden line layers that were in the displays previously map to this one hidden line layer. Likewise, all hatch pattern display components now map to the hatch pattern layer key here. Center lines, background screens that make your background gray. There's a handful of non-plottable objects on the architectural side that we wanted to screen as well. And likewise, non-plottable objects that we don't want to screen. So we've added all these layers here. These were all ones that were in the displays. And we managed to reduce it from 29 down to these common keys here. And that actually kind of becomes nice because you can now control all of your hidden lines, your defaults, from this one key right here, rather than having a duct hidden line key, a piping hidden line key, a conduit and a cable tray hidden line key. You've got one general key here that you can control to basically have consistency with all of your hidden lines, consistency with all the center lines, and so on. So it actually got simplified there, and I think that makes it a little easier to manage. Back to migration though. Once you add these keys into your company standard layer key style, any existing one that might be out there, then you only have to add it once. Next time a future version comes out, whether that's 2014, 2015, whatever, if these keys are in your custom your company custom layer key style, and you've already customized them to your company layer standards, then you basically just point the new version to your layer key style and run with it. You don't have to add these keys every single year. the other benefit of this, once you've added these keys in there, our displays are going to be mapped to those keys, from this point onwards. So, like right here, we're not going to change this. Next year, it's still going to be mapped to that. And so if your company layer key style has this key in there, then it would just start working. Um, let's talk about 2012. Back when they were all mapped to these layers. So maybe your company layer standard is different than this, probably is, and you've got your own company layer key style as well. So let's say going from 2011 to 2012. Going from 2011 to 2012, you had your company 2011 layer key style. You might start using it with the 2012 when it came out, but you would also have to go into the displays here and remap all these layers to use your layers standard, right? Now you don't have to. You don't have to come into the displays and change all these layers. It's a step that's eliminated from the process of migration here. So no more having to edit the displays and all the layers that are in the displays. Really nice. Um, so those are the layer keys. Layer field overrides. This was added in there. Um, we're pointing to this generic hidden line layer, but you might want to come in here and, just to make it the same as what it was in 2012, you could map it right here back to M, and you could add phasing. So basically this overrides some of the fields there. You could make this specific to duct. So it's no longer a generic G ano hidden line layer. It's now a M duct hidden line layer. So that's what these layer field overrides do, is um, basically just replace those fields there. In um, You don't even have to use the layer keys with the overrides. You could just come in here and start making a layer based on the layer standard itself, field by field. So you can generate layers now too, just by using these layer overrides, which is kind of cool. That capability actually was already in system definitions. So if we come here and look at system definitions, this has been in there for years. In the design rules tab, you could map your system definitions to layer keys. Um, Back in AutoCAD Building Systems 2006 and earlier versions, a lot of the system definitions were mapped this way. So they weren't even mapped to layer keys. They were mapped, let's see, this is piping, isn't it? And then you'd have a minor set and so on. But they would build the layers this way in the system definitions. And this led to a lot of confusion because this, back in 2006 and earlier versions, you could build a layer this way, but what about the layer properties? What color does the layer? What line weight and line type? And those were often set back here in the display properties on an override for that system, and it became real confusing. Where's my layer being created? Where's my layer properties coming from? Do I go to my system definition? Do I go to the layer keys? Do I go into the displays and the display components? We've really been making an effort to simplify things since 2006. the displays are kind of one of the last areas to be mapped to layer keys, and now all your default values are just done in the layer key styles. So these are gone since 2006, which was really nice. All system definitions are mapped to a key, and now all displays are mapped to a key. And it becomes, those layer key styles really become the one-stop shop to do your layer defaults. Um, and I can't think of anything else to really mention about the layer keys on display components. Um, I do probably want to point out that in paperspace, so in AutoCAD architecture, I mentioned that we got rid of all the layers. There were only 4 in the architectural templates. 3 of the 4 came from the display components. One of them happened to be a real simple one. Did not come from the display components, but our goal was to get rid of all the layers um, built into the templates and paperspace. So here in paperspace, if we select our viewports, in older versions, these viewports were mapped to a layer, G ano-viewport, or VIEW, I think it was. We've remapped it to def points, and we made def points the same color as um, the original viewports. So def points is one of those layers you can't delete. Comes in AutoCAD, and it's a non-plot layer. So that's the key thing about these viewports here, is we wanted them to be non-plottable and not change color, but we didn't want to occupy a single layer just to do that. So anyway, I think that's an improvement. You know, um, the AutoCAD architecture templates they now have 0 layers, and so that was one change we had to make just to knock out that very last layer in the architectural templates. We did the same thing in AutoCAD MEP, so just don't be surprised there. Okay. Thank you very much.